David, I'd like to understand God and religion, and I've turned to philosophy as a mechanism for doing that. You've liked to do the opposite in taking religion as a mechanism for understanding philosophy,
Right.
basically as new kinds of thought experiments. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, philosophers love thought experiments, and they often take a sci-fi turn. We may invoke some mad scientist who has powers, is able to do things, has a device that hasn't yet been built, right? But that doesn't stop us from employing this person in a thought experiment designed to clear up our concepts, to get us clear on some questions we're interested in. If a mad scientist can play that role, God has even more resources at his disposal.
So give an example of the mad scientist, then we'll see how God can be even madder in the power.
Right. Well, in Descartes' Meditations, he famously invokes an evil, deceptive demon. The role played by that demon is usually played in contemporary philosophy, films, sci-fi stories, by some future device, right? The film Total Recall, for example, some device that can give you a complete set of experiences, and it's produced by science in some vague way. But that's clearly something that God could do. The thing about God is, the thing about theological questions in general is that they're rarely just theological questions. You think about the question of predestination that comes up in certain versions of Christianity and Islam. Doesn't that parallel questions about free will threatened by causal determinism?
Sure.
And wouldn't it be surprising if solutions that were worked out in the Middle Ages to the problem for human freedom generated by God, divine predestination, divine foreknowledge, whatever it is, might not be useful when it comes to modern versions of the problem. The way I look at it is this. This is why I think God is really useful in perhaps clarifying some really dicey philosophical questions. In 1919, Sir Arthur Eddington journeyed to the southern hemisphere to observe the position of stars behind an eclipse of the sun in order to test Einstein's hypothesis that massive objects would bend starlight. He was able to do so with the help of the sun. That's not something that you could do without the presence of a very massive, object exercising a pretty impressive gravitational field. I think plunking God down in the middle of an otherwise humdrum philosophical scenario can sometimes have the effect that the sun had for Eddington. It might make something clearer. It might change the conditions under which the phenomenon occurs in such a way that we can see something we wouldn't otherwise have seen.
What's an example of that?
An example, I think, is when it comes to the problem of divine foreknowledge. You use a human foreknower, time travelers say, they could be wrong. You get messages from the future. Well, maybe it got scrambled by the tachyonic field or whatever, however you want to tell the story, right? But God doesn't suffer from those, possible breakdowns. God is supposed to be infallibly omniscient.
And in the thought experiment, you can assume that.
You can assume it. You can just stipulate it.
Right.
That's what's neat about thought experiments. You get to stipulate everything.
And that creates this massive object, which then forces you to see the problem in its raw light.
Exactly. In ordinary conditions of human life, alternative possibilities, the ability to do otherwise, and the fact that the action sprung from me, I'm the genuine source of the action, always seem to go hand in hand. And just like in ordinary conditions near the surface of the earth, light always goes straight. But you plunk a star down in its pathway that's big enough to bend it, to show us the truth about light and its relationship to gravity. So you introduce God into the ordinary conditions in which human beings act, God's foreknowledge in particular, that threatens human freedom. We might be able to see what the true relationship between alternative possibilities and sourcehood is. And you might not be able to see that without introducing God into the picture.
And that's why philosophers who are atheistic or agnostic, don't care about God, can use God experiments to understand just pure philosophy.
Exactly right. Some of the most interesting work on the problem of divine foreknowledge has been done by philosophers who are atheists or agnostics.